let's watch WillE's Priest video. Priest! Is it better in Burning Crusade? I have been putting this off for 2 weeks. I have not seen this yet. Today is the day we finally watch the Priest video. Here we go. Okay. Nope. I would say Priest is better in TBC. I think it is. Yeah. Okay, boys, here we go. Listen. 3, 2, 1. This is it. Take a look here. Let's see what it is. Yeah, we've seen the Warlock one. Yeah. Okay.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, WillE here. With TBC confirmed, it's about time we did a little bit of a class update. Let's take a look back at each class in the Burning Crusade, their performance overall, and hopefully help you make your choice moving forwards. We will be looking at what's new in terms of talents and abilities, leveling, PvE, who's the new king of the meter, PvP.
You know what triggers me here? This right here. This is impossible. What you just saw here?
Who's the new king of the meter,
that is impossible. A boomkin cannot shift into tree form. You don't have the talent points for it. That is literally impossible.
PvP has much changed.
Not possible.
Tier sets which actually exist for every specialization now. And through this, I hope to answer: is your class any better now?
Mm-hmm. The disclaimer. Here we go.
The final healer to go on the list and the go-to healer throughout the whole of Classic. Versatile, powerful, and a staple of any raid, but as I'm sure you know, they are much more than just a heal bot. Their DPS counterpart spec providing excellent raid-wide utility, which only improved considerably in TBC. Today, we take a look at the Priest. Despite having two identities between heal and DPS, you often had a real tough choice, trying to forge your path as a damage dealer, and were pushed to heal through perceived viability, raid performance, and especially through tier sets, majority of which only catered to making your heals better. And as we've seen so far with many other classes that support—
Ew, look at those ears. Look at her ears when she does this.
And as we've seen so—
Ew. What the fuck? Ugh.
far with many other classes that supported a hybrid playstyle, Blizzard brought in many a change to assure you that a raid spot would have your name on it. And for a raid in TBC not to have a Shadow Priest is really unthinkable. So then, let's make a start on this, shall we? What's new? Let's start with the Priest racial abilities, because they still exist in TBC and some of them do change, as well as having new additions for both of the new races, which both support the Priest class. First of all, the big news is now all priests will have Fear Ward. Up until a later patch, it was only Draenei and Dwarves that had it. However, now it's on a 3-minute cooldown.
You know what they should do? They should give this to every priest other than Undead Priest. Wouldn't that make sense? Every priest can have this, but not Undead Priest. Like, that would be, like, kind of a little bit more fair.
Instead of 30 seconds.
Because there's some
in place of Fear Ward, Draenei and Dwarves get Chastise, a 2-second instant cast immobilize effect on a 30-second cooldown, and it's pretty good in PvP actually. Both racials change for Night Elves. Illumin's Grace is no longer dodge, instead it's just a chance for hit against melee and ranged attacks. 20% at that, not bad. And Star Shards is no longer completely useless, it's now instant cast instead of channeled. Still doesn't benefit from Vampiric Touch or Embrace, unfortunately. It doesn't do shadow damage. Blood Elves got Touch of Weakness, the same as what Undead have at the moment, and a new ability called Consume Magic, which dispels one magic effect off you for around 500 or so mana, and it can only dispel priest abilities. In PvE, it sounds like you're probably just going to snipe off your Divine Spirit or Power Word Fortitude for some mana. Could be decent in PvP, a little down rank Renew or Touch of Weakness for free mana gains really. And Draenei on top of Chastise have Symbol of Hope, which is instant cast around 1000 mana over.
What would Undead have instead then? What would Undead have instead?
15 seconds for your entire party, which is actually pretty amazing. Should be castable in shadow form, sort of like how Power Word Shield is, because it's a disciplined tree ability, making Draenei look like the ultimate mana battery. No other of the existing racials change from vanilla. New ability wise, we have Mass Dispel, famous for its use in PvP to remove Divine Shield and Ice Block. Other than that, it tends to have niche use, removing up to 10 negative effects from friendlies and 10 positives from enemies. Binding heal, which is kind of rarely used, it's like a flash heal that affects you as well as the target, with a bit of a mana discount on it. Prayer of Mending, I've always really liked this spell. I think it's something about the sound when it just bounces all over the place. A heal that jumps between targets when they take damage up to 5 times. Super mana efficient if the heal will proc all 5 times, or even twice for that matter. It's great in PvP and PvE. Shadow Word Death, again, a PvP playmaking ability. Instant cast, hits pretty hard, and if the target lives, you take the same damage back that you dealt. Whilst it sounds like a pure negative, priests in PvE are already self-healing a lot through Vampiric Embrace, and in PvP this damage backfiring can be used to break CCs if it's predicted, such as Polymorph or Blind. Last of all, we have Shadow Fiend. If the mana bar does run low, pop this little guy to restore it back up again. It has really high avoidance and spell resist baseline, so isn't likely to be picked off by some random AoE, does shadow damage too, and just restores a whole lot of mana. Leveling wise, priests were already extremely strong in Classic due to their mana efficiency, but they really had to lean on their wanding for, well, pretty much the whole of Classic really. It wasn't exactly the most thrilling leveling.
You know what's weird? Like, leveling a priest is actually really pretty fast, but fuck is it boring. Priest leveling is so boring. Fast though.
Experience, but the whole feel of never needing to stop was such a carry. Now in TBC they get a little spell at the bottom of their shadow tree called Vampiric Touch, which we will be talking about in a lot more detail for PvE, but suffice to say this puts more than just a bit more punch into your damage and mana efficiency. Whilst the wand will still be your best friend at lower levels or with less gear, it'll fall out of fashion over time as you naturally just get used to keeping that mana bar healthy through spirit tap whilst whittling opponents down with dots. It's worth a mention that 1/3 of your bonus healing is converted into spell damage in TBC, so even if you are holy at the moment, the Shadows playstyle will still be there for you. Also, all that bonus spirit will go a long way to making sure you never really go unless you're extra keen and you want to pick up some of those tier 2.5 tokens. That could be a good idea at the moment as well. Or just go the dungeon route and stick to holy or discipline. Both those specs will work as well as ever for leveling as part of a group. Not too much other to say than that. I do like to keep this part quite short. Experiment with the class a bit during this time, see what works for you. Right then, PvE. I'd like to start with where I think the majority of the priest player base will be at the moment. I sound like I'm doing the Paladin video again here, don't I? And that is on the healing side. So Holy and Discipline were both amazing in Classic. You really can't go wrong picking a priest if you want to heal. Do they keep that power level in TBC then? Yes. Yes, they do. However, they aren't so far and away in power level anymore. What they do keep is their versatility. There is no environment where your holy priest will not be useful. And if we are talking overall utility per healer, they don't quite match up to a shaman, no one does, but they can still be there on throughput, most of all when they're spec'd into focusing on their group-wide healing, through spells like Prayer of or Circle of Healing, and even Prayer of Mending, while still also being a solid tank healer with greater heal spam. Down ranking is still a thing in TBC, and priests will need to do this to balance their mana pool with stop casting macros, because as fights get longer, your mana can struggle if you spam too much. So here is a talent tree for the big heals focused priest. Now if you played a priest in Classic, it's a bit like looking in a mirror because there aren't a huge amount of things that are new. Inspiration is still great with your new AoE spells, Holy Reach is taken much for the same reason.
And this I guess is a big reminder for people. I think it's like they changed what's it called, PI from like 20% damage increase to I think 30% haste increase. So they changed PI also.
Holy Concentration, I'm starting to see a trend in these talent names, is like clear casting for heals, letting you fire off a big greater heal when it procs. Spirit of Redemption is taken because free 5% spirit. Lightwell unfortunately still cancels its heal when you take damage. Empowered heals at the bottom for some scaling, and finally Circle of Healing, which is like a weaker Prayer of Healing, but it's instant cast, spammable, and really strong on throughput, but very mana intensive. Also note it heals the target and their group. You will...
Dude, you know another thing I remember the other day? I actually had to look it up. I was thinking, I was like, huh, is this how it is? I looked it up. I don't know why. I thought in TBC, spell haste makes dots tick faster. It totally doesn't. They added that, I think, in Wrath. I don't even know when they added that. Haste, nothing for dots. Feels bad, dude.
Probably also want an improved Divine Spirit Priest. Here's what it will look like. It's quite similar to the last spec, but just going far enough to pick up this talent. Make sure Divine Spirit increase your target spell damage and healing by 10% of their spirit. Their spirit, remember, not yours as the healer. Of course, not every class, healer or DPS really cares that much about spirit. Priests and Druid healers are stacking spirit, and DPS wise we've got Shadow Priests, Boomies, and to a lesser extent mages who have some spirit on their gear. So it can be a nice amount of free stats for a few classes. It stacks up very well with the human racial as well, which is now 10%. But the spec that really comes a long way in TBC is Shadow. Now, I've always liked Shadow Priest. Nothing to do with me maining a lock at all. Obligatory mention that the debuff cap was raised from 16 to 40, so you can actually press all of your buttons and not overly worry about pushing other beneficial effects off the target. Changes wise, the threat modifier on Mind Blast has gone, thankfully. Shadow Vulnerability is nerfed down to 10% at max stacks. However, Shadow Priest bring a new talent called Misery that makes the target take another 5% bonus spell damage, so it's overall unchanged really. Shadow Power is in to make your 2 spells that can crit a bit more often, and no, unfortunately, dots and channeled effects still do not crit or benefit from haste. Focus Mind for some mana saves, and the big new addition is Vampiric Touch, a new reasonably hard-hitting damage over time that converts 5% of all shadow damage you deal into mana for you and your entire party. This is Shadow's big selling point, the reason why Shadow Priest became known as mana batteries, and the reason now I realise why I always got into pugs so easily back during TBC. This ability single-handedly solves your mana issues whilst also providing thousands of mana back to your party members over the course of an encounter. It's this spell that will always find Shadow Priest a place with the healers or arcane mages of your group. So yes, you won't be in the group with the Boomies or the Elementals for the free stats, but to be honest, you gain very little benefit from crit anyway, so it's not really a huge loss. Shadow Priests do fine enough early on damage-wise, as dots are just good at the start of the game, but their lack of ability to scale beyond spell damage really hurts them, so expect to have more and more people overtake you as the expansion goes on. The Shadow Priest isn't there to top DPS meters, but they carry the raid in other ways.
Alpha? You mean beta? There's more work to go. I think they should do a lot more PvP testing. Like, that's my general take. But yeah, like, they're making progress.
And unlike many other more utility-focused classes, some raids may even take 2 Shadow Priests because they offer that much for free through their really good toolkit. If you like Shadow Priest in Classic, well, now your raid is gonna like you a whole lot more in the Burning Crusade. Moving on to PvP then, an area of the game where priests in Classic have been also very strong. Shadow particularly in smaller skirmishes where they can take advantage of their dots and self-heals and shields, and Discipline for more group-oriented PvP supporting their allies with their strong dispels and instant cast toolkit. And moving forward through the Dark Portal to TBC, they are still looking in great shape. Since we were just talking about Shadow for PvE, we'll have a look at Discipline first of all. For PvP, I'd expect Priest to be the healer you see the most after Druid, or perhaps even a similar amount in the early seasons if many players decide to move forwards, with the Priest as their main character. The class spec combo of Priest and Discipline is just really stacked when it comes to sheer utility and healing power. It also gets a huge boost from Resilience, as in Classic, whilst Priest can do a lot, the chance you get deleted when a geared melee stuns you for even a few seconds is quite high. Now, thanks to Resilience taking less damage from crits, less chance to be crit, amongst other things, Priests can really start to shine. Here is our specialization, picking up Martyrdom for guaranteed spell knockback immunity after receiving a crit, as well as a chance to resist interrupts. Improved mana burn now reduces the cast time by 1 second.
You think there'll be more Priests and Druids? Yeah, so do I. I think actually... It's weird, man. Even though Druid and Warlock is really, really good in TBC, I still think there will be a disproportionately low representation of Druids and Warlocks in TBC Arena. That's my take. I think for whatever reason, like you see this in Classic also, a lot of people don't play Druid or Warlock in Classic. I think in TBC it's kind of true also. I remember playing, you know, vanilla private server, or sorry, TBC private servers, and even TBC back in the day. It was always really, really easy to find a raid group as a Warlock, even though they're so good. It's just like, I think a lot of people just maybe don't want to play a Druid or a Warlock. I'm not sure why. Maybe like the class fantasy doesn't appeal to a lot of people. Who knows?
Focus Power Mass Dispel is a 1.5 second cast baseline. This takes it down to 0.5, as well as giving you a nice amount of hit for when you are on the offense, which will be very often on the Priest. Reflective Shield does decent damage, and Focus Will really stops the Priest from falling over under pressure, at max stacks being 12% reduced damage and 30% bonus healing, which is pretty amazing. Power Infusion has changed from 20% bonus spell damage to 20% casting speed and mana cost reduction for 15 seconds. And at the bottom of the tree we have Pain Suppression, 40% reduced damage and a 65% chance to resist dispels for 8 seconds. This is your big cooldown to put a stop to all ins. With other talents you pick up in your tree, you'll be around 75% chance to resist dispel effects. So whilst not immune, you would have to get unlucky, which at some point no doubt you will, but the actual effect of Pain Suppression is magic itself, so at some point you're going to roll a dice and lose. Over in the Holy Tree we have Holy Nova, because we need to get those rogues and druids out of stealth, Divine Fury to aid your offensive capabilities, and 1 point in Blessed Recovery for another magic trash debuff to cover more important ones. And much like the druid, which we're seeing a real trend with here on good PvP healers, is the vast majority of the priest kit is instant cast. Dispel Magic, Prayer of Mending, Renew, Power Word Shield, Power Infusion, Pain Suppression, Psychic Scream, only for them to really do DPS.
Dude, I'm gonna say it again, man. I think we're talking PvP. I think the priest skill cap is higher than Resto Druid skill cap. I really do. Like, I think it's like you can be just so fucking insane on priest. I really think you can. I don't know, it's just wild, dude. It's just fucking insane. No way. I think yes. Wait.
Do they need to hard cast? It's also worth a mention they are the only healer to pack an offensive and defensive dispel that can remove 2 magical effects either way. This ability alone on any healer would push them into being a more competitive choice, but it's landed on a class where they're already really good. Discipline is seen in all brackets at high ratings, in 2s most often with Rogue, Mage or Hunter, and 3s forming the final part of the holy trinity of Rogue, Mage, Priest. However, there is another priest spec that you will still be seeing in Arena, less frequently, and no, it's not holy, that's not really a thing. Shadow, however, Shadow is. Straight into a spec then, because it's not all too different from PvE to be honest. We have improved Psychic Scream and Silence, which are taken. The PvP gloves work nicely alongside these new talents. Silence is extra good in TBC, as for some reason silence effects are both not on diminishing returns and untrinketable, hence why you'll see comps like Shadow and Mage so often, which is 9 seconds of point and click, healer can't play the game. Shadow doesn't pack the durability that Discipline does due to its lack of cooldowns, but it can put out some huge damage in its own right. Shadow vulnerability quickly builds up strong dispel protection on your main target when combined with your Shadow of Pain, Misery, and Vampiric Touch. So despite Shadow not having any built-in offensive dispel protection, it kind of resolves that issue by itself. Other than that, it's kind of like the Shadow Priest you know at the moment. You can't have that assurance that Vampiric Touch will always be up though, so they're still liable to
Dude, I would love to play Shadow Priest Warlock also in 2s. I think that'd be so fun. I think it'd be so fun, dude. Man, I really need to have a second Warlock so I can do a bunch of like different meme comps I want to play.
I mean, they're pretty fast, even more so when they have to play defensive, though they do have Shadow Fiend to restore some mana, of course. Pray for Blackout procs and go all in. That's your Shadow Priest. They are often seen with Rogue or Mage in 2s, Rogue Mage Shadow Priest in 3s, or even with Resto Sham Mage Shadow Priest in 3s, amongst other various comps. Let's finish up checking some tier gear out. Tier 4, the Incarnate Regalia. Shadow, a bit more stats and duration on your Shadow Fiend. It shouldn't really be dying anyways, but you'll get a bit of extra mana out of it. The 4 set a bit more damage, which will scale up alongside Vampiric Touch, so that's something. Holy 2 set, Prayer of Healing, applies a weak heal over time. The 4 set a stacking cast speed reduction on Greater Heal from Flash Heal up to 0.5 seconds, so not too big of a deal. Tier 5, the Avatar Regalia. The 2 set is a different way to save some mana, so okay. The 4 set is up to 100 bonus spell damage on next cast after a Shadow Herb Pain tick. I guess you could use it to snapshot your dots alongside other trinkets. Healer wise, the 2 set, if Greater Heal tops off a target, you get 100 mana back. Obviously you don't want every single heal to be over healing, which is how I read it, but it's a small benefit if you are down ranking though. The 4 set is a bit more Renew, which is decent. Tier 6, the Absolution Regalia. 2 set for Shadow, more Shadow Herb Pain, and the 4 set is more Mind Blast damage. Pretty good overall, at least both tier bonuses are going towards direct damage now, and direct damage means more mana from Vampiric Touch. Healer spec 2 set is reduced cast on Prayer of Healing, which will be good when it's good if that makes too much sense. Even still, it is an expensive spell to be spamming. The 4 set is more heal on Greater Healing. Now this is actually really good, especially when you are on tank heal duty or they're just taking a lot of damage. I feel like although there is a lot to the Priest, I've managed to go through everything I wanted to relatively quickly. Maybe it's just the Priest in TBC still feels quite familiar to me compared to Classic. Aside from the big gameplay changes, of course, the utility on Shadow and how Disc has been more focused into just being a PvP spec now. I suppose we should try and answer though, the Priest, is it any better now? Across the board, it's almost a full yes. I'd say Shadow improves the most, becoming fully playable in PvE content, and still a strong pick in Arena. I'd expect some strong contenders from Priest vying for the shadow spots in good raids at the moment though. Healer wise in PvE, I'd say compared to Classic, they aren't quite the full on overall package that they were. In terms of utility, Shaman really knocks them off that top spot. Not to say they perform poorly at all, far from it. It's just you have some competition now, and that is usually a good thing. So then, that is the Priest, the strong healer you know and love. Now with a very much in-demand DPS spec as well. Excellent. Anything you feel I've missed out, let me know below. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Poggers.
Very soon.
Nice one, WillE.